administered. The sooner, the better. Step 2. 24 to 48 hours after taking RU46, the woman takes misoprostol, also called Cytotec, that is administered either orally or vaginally. RU46 and misoprostol together cause severe cramping, contractions, and often heavy bleeding to force the dead baby out of the woman's uterus. The process can be very intense and painful, and the bleeding and contractions can last from a few hours to several days. While she could lose her baby anytime and anywhere during this process, the woman will often sit on a toilet as she prepares to expel the child, which she will then flush. She may even see her dead baby within the pregnancy sac. At 9 weeks, for example, the baby will be almost an inch long, and if she looks carefully, she might be able to count the fingers and toes. After she has disposed of her baby, the woman may have bleeding and spotting for several weeks. Bleeding lasts, on average, 9 to 16 days. 8% of women bleed more than 30 days, and 1% require hospitalization because of heavy bleeding. RU46 is only FDA approved for the first 7 weeks of pregnancy. While RU46 can be used off-label up to 9 weeks, the failure rate increases as the pregnancy progresses. At 7 weeks, it has a 5% failure rate. At 8 weeks, an 8% failure rate, and at 9 weeks, a 10% failure rate. If failure occurs, she will usually be offered a surgical abortion. For the mother, medical abortion often causes abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, headache, and heavy bleeding. Maternal deaths have occurred, most frequently due to infection and undiagnosed ectopic pregnancy. First trimester surgical abortion called suction D&C, dilatation and curettage. This is the most frequently performed abortion and is used typically from 5 to 13 weeks of pregnancy. After administering anesthesia, the abortionist uses a speculum like this. This is placed inside the vagina and opened using this screw on the side, allowing the abortionist to see the cervix, the entrance to the uterus. The cervix acts as a gate that stays closed for the duration of pregnancy, protecting the baby until it is ready for birth. The abortionist uses a series of metal rods called dilators, like these, which increase in thickness, and inserts them into the cervix to dilate it, gaining access to the inside of the uterus where the baby resides. The baby has a heartbeat, fingers, toes, arms, and legs, but its bones are still weak and fragile. The abortionist takes a suction catheter like this one. This is a 14 French suction catheter. It's clear plastic, about 9 inches long, and it has a hole through the center. It is inserted through the cervix into the uterus. The suction machine is then turned on with a force 10 to 20 times more powerful than your household vacuum cleaner. The baby is rapidly torn apart by the force of the suction and squeezed through this tubing down into the suction machine, followed by the placenta. Though the uterus is mostly emptied at this point, one of the risks of a suction D&C is incomplete abortion, essentially pieces of the baby or placenta left behind. This can lead to infection or bleeding. In an attempt to prevent this, the abortionist uses a curette to scrape the lining of the uterus. A curette is basically a long-handled curved blade. Once the uterus is empty, the speculum is removed and the abortion is complete. The risks of suction D&C include perforation or laceration of the uterus or cervix, potentially damaging intestine, bladder, and nearby blood vessels, hemorrhage, infection, and in rare instances, even death. Future pregnancies are also at a greater risk for loss or premature delivery due to abortion-related trauma and injury to the cervix. Second trimester surgical abortion called dilatation and evacuation, or D&E. A D&E is performed between 13 and 24 weeks of pregnancy. After administering anesthesia, the abortionist uses a weighted speculum, like this one, that opens the vagina widely. Because second trimester babies are so large, this greater access facilitates a late-term abortion. Late-term abortion requires that the cervix be prepared 24 to 48 hours in advance with laminaria. Laminaria is a type of sterilized seaweed that absorbs water over 8 to 12 hours and swells to several times its original diameter. Once removed, metal dilators can be used to further open the cervix as needed. Once the cervix has been stretched open, the suction tube is placed inside. A baby at 20 weeks gestation is as big as the length of my hand, from head to rump, not counting the legs. The suction machine is turned on, and pale yellow amniotic fluid surrounding the baby is suctioned out through the catheters. With babies this big, they don't fit through catheters this size. The baby's bones and skull are too strong to be torn apart by suction alone. This is a Sofer clamp. A Sofer clamp is made of stainless steel. It's about 13 inches long. The business end is about 2.5 inches long and a ½ inch wide, and there are rows of sharp teeth. This is a grasping instrument. When it gets a hold of something, it does not let go. The abortionist uses this clamp to grasp an arm or leg. Once he has a firm grip, the abortionist pulls hard in order to tear the limb from the baby's body. One by one, the rest of the limbs are removed, along with the intestines, the spine, and the heart and lungs. Usually the most difficult part of the procedure is extracting the baby's head, which is about the size of a large plum at 20 weeks. The head is grasped and crushed. The abortionist knows he has crushed the skull when a white substance comes out of the cervix. This was the baby's brains. The abortionist then removes skull pieces. He removes the placenta and any leftover parts of the baby with a curette, scraping the lining of the uterus for any remaining tissue. The abortionist then collects the baby parts and reassembles them to make sure that there are 2 arms, 2 legs, and all the pieces. Once all the parts have been accounted for, the abortion is complete. For the woman, this procedure carries a significant risk of major complications, including perforation or laceration of the uterus or cervix, with possible damage to the bowel, bladder, and other maternal organs. Infection and hemorrhage can also occur, which can even lead to death. Future pregnancies are also at greater risk for loss or premature delivery due to abortion-related trauma and injury to the cervix. Finally, I'm going to describe a 3rd trimester induced abortion, which is performed at 25 weeks to term. At this point, the baby is almost fully developed and viable, meaning he or she could survive outside the womb if the mother were to go into labor prematurely. Because the baby is so large and developed, this procedure takes 3 or 4 days to complete. On day 1, the abortionist uses a large needle to inject a drug called digoxin. Digoxin is generally used to treat heart problems, but a high enough dosage of digoxin will cause fatal cardiac arrest. The abortionist inserts the needle with the digoxin through the woman's abdomen or through her vagina and into the baby, targeting either the head, torso, or heart. The baby will feel it. Babies at this stage feel pain. When the needle pierces the baby's body and the digoxin takes effect, the life of the baby will end. The abortionist then inserts multiple sticks of seaweed called laminaria into the woman's cervix. They will slowly open up the cervix for delivery of a stillborn baby. While the woman waits for the laminaria to dilate her cervix, she carries her dead baby inside of her for 2 to 3 days. On day 2, the abortionist replaces the laminaria and may perform a second ultrasound to ensure the baby is dead. If the child is still alive, he administers another lethal dose of digoxin. The woman then goes back to where she is staying while her cervix continues to dilate. If she goes into labor and is unable to make it to the clinic in time, she will give birth at home or in a hotel. In this case, she may be advised to deliver her baby into a bathroom toilet. The abortionist then comes to remove the baby and clean up. If she can make it to the clinic, she will do so during her severest contractions and deliver her dead son or daughter. If the baby does not come out whole, then the procedure becomes a D&E, a dilation and evacuation, and the abortionist uses clamps and forceps to dismember the baby, piece by piece. Once the placenta and all the body parts have been removed, the abortion is complete. Late-term abortions have a high risk of hemorrhage, lacerations, and uterine perforations, as well as a risk of maternal death. Future pregnancies are also at a greater risk for loss or premature delivery due to abortion-related trauma and injury to the cervix. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm Dr. Anthony Levatino, and in the early part of my career as an OBGYN, I performed over 1,200 abortions. One day, after completing one of those abortions, I looked at the remains of a preborn child whose life I had ended, and all I could see was someone's son or daughter. I came to realize that killing a baby at any stage of pregnancy for any reason is wrong. I want you to know today, no matter where you're at or what you've done, you can change. Make a decision today to protect the preborn. Thank you for your time.
Oh, guys, I am so sorry. I just got a text that everyone let me know I'm muted for the last 2 minutes. I apologize, guys. It happens to all of us, right? With the Zoom and everything going on. Typically, I'm the one making fun of everybody when that happens, and now it happened to me. So apologize for that, guys. Thank you again. Let me backtrack a little bit, and thank you for bearing with me for the 2 minutes it took me to notice that. Welcome to this webcast, guys. This is amazing. My name is Mark Cavalier with the Southwest Coalition for Life. And it's been really amazing. Just the last couple of days, we have seen over 300 people register for this event. And so just let me know if you can actually hear me this time around. Yes, okay, much better. Thank you, guys. We're good to go. So we've had over 300 people register in just a couple days of this really short notice opportunity that's just come up. And so this is the most important year of all years to get involved and to get active and to show up and to attend because of so many things that are going on. We've got because later this year we've got at the Supreme Court the Dobbs versus Jackson case that is set to finally, after nearly 50 years, overturn the Roe versus Wade, which legalized abortion up to the state level. And it's going to be putting that back at the state level. And this is so important, especially for our state of New Mexico, because as many of you remember, last year we had SB 10 that that at the state level in New Mexico protected and solidified that even if Roe is overturned, abortion is going to continue in our state up to the day of birth for any reason. Minors without parental consent, just the worst of the worst. The other thing that has happened is just our neighbors right to the east in the state of Texas, of course, have had the Texas heartbeat law, which has been amazing within the state of Texas. But consequently, what has happened is we have seen the state of New Mexico now, in addition to becoming, being the late-term abortion capital of the nation, has essentially become a back alley abortion clinic for the whole state of Texas. And so that is why more than ever before, it's so essential that we get involved at the state levels. The other thing we're going to be talking about later too, we've got an international expert joining us again, was the HB 47 law that passed last year, which was the assisted suicide bill, making New Mexico one of the most anti-life states in the country at the state level. So thank you for being here. Thank you for getting through any of the tech. Again, super short notice. And I got a couple people saying, oh, okay. I'm looking at the comments. Some of you are still, if you can't hear me, refresh your page because other people can now. So, but anyway, thank you for joining us. We're going to get started off here with a word of prayer. And then I'm going to start bringing on some guests from around the state and around the nation. So let's start off in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord God, we come before you and we just ask for peace. We ask for peace in the face of so many things that are concerning, so many things that make us nervous and make us anxious, Lord. We just ask for peace. We ask for grace upon everybody who believes in the sanctity of human life, that every life created is an image of you, an image of you as the creator, Lord. And we just ask for grace that you give us the tenacity to stand up and to be a voice for the voiceless, and to get involved, and to even when we don't know exactly what to do, and even if we don't know if we have the courage to do so, Lord, just give us that strength. Give us your strength in us and through us, that we may stand up and just discern and know that even if we don't know the next few steps ahead of us, that we just take that first step, Lord. And we thank you for this opportunity coming up next week with the New Mexico March for Life on January 11th. We pray for safety over that event, that we may be a part of that in whatever way you're calling us to spread the word, and so that people will wake up to everything happening in the state of New Mexico and the nation when it comes to the right to life, which is our first right, Lord. I ask especially for grace upon everyone who's part of this webcast today, and for all of our speakers for this event, for the technical part of this, so we have no more technical difficulties moving forward, Lord, because we know that the enemy is trying to prevent us from having a voice, and we will not allow that, Lord, with your grace. We ask all of this through the precious blood of your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay. That being said, everybody, I am going to go ahead and bring on a special guest who was actually the first one that gave me a call and roped me into being involved in this just like a week ago when all of this came up, and that is one of the founders of Abortion on Trial. Let me get my bearings here, Mr. Mike Seibel, who Mike, make sure you're unmuted now too. I've learned the lesson, and so Mike, this has been kind of an interesting year. I know last year the march, the traditional typical march, was canceled, and there was kind of a small march going on. Looks like you're having trouble hearing me, Mike. Are you
yeah,
there?
I'm still having trouble hearing you, Mark. It's a little bit rough in this situation. I don't know if you can hear me.
Okay, no, I think I'm good. Sorry, folks. This is one of the fun things about going live with short notice without much time to practice. If anyone's having a hard time, or if the volume's okay, let me know about the volume. But so, Mike, can you tell us, though, why the march is not happening in Santa Fe this year, and the incident that kind of led up to all of this happening next week?
Sure, Mark. I can tell you exactly what happened. On November 26th, a sidewalk advocate by the name of Dora was out on the sidewalk praying, and there was a little incident with one of the counter protesters, and the security guard himself went into the public right away, and he decided to detain and handcuff Dora, which is a felony under New Mexico law, and was essentially...
Oh, we lost Mike.
Essentially contravening New Mexico law with a false imprisonment case. And this drew national and local attention. I mean, the the security guards, the abortion employees do not have a right to touch you in this situation. They don't have a right to manhandle you. They don't have a right to detain you or arrest you. So this brought national attention, including Abby Johnson, who made her opinion well known about what had happened on the sidewalk, and she was very upset. So that's how this started to come about. And she said, "I want to come out and pray over our sidewalks." Well, at the exact same time, the governor ordered the New Mexico State Police to cancel the March for Life up in Santa Fe due to a variety of safety and security reasons. I don't think it's COVID related. I think it's just, from what I can tell right now, is something that is unrelated to COVID. So I got together with Abby and I asked her if she would come out here, and Alex Schadenberg, and do a March for Life for us. To have one live. So we have quickly put together a March for Life. We want to cause a lot of commotion on the sidewalk. Abby will be out praying on the sidewalks that day. We can get some schedules for you in this situation, and as soon as we get together with Abby Johnson and her team and her staff to say when she wants to go out that morning. But we want people to come out to the sidewalk. We want people to come out to the event. We want to cause the most commotion that we can cause for the abortion industry here in New Mexico at this time. So I think that is our ultimate goal, is to cause some commotion as much as we can possible. Make it known that we are not going to be treated this way. You cannot do this to us. You cannot do this to us on the sidewalks, and we cannot do this to us on the legislature.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. And I turned up my mic here, so hopefully that helps for you. But there was your director of operations, Jamie. She just put something out too, asking people to take action by sending an email in response to this incident.
Yes, to send an email in response to this incident to the New Mexico Regulatory Board for Private Investigators and Security Officers. If you could send an email there. We don't know who he is employed by, but he is licensed by the state of New Mexico, and it's time for him to suffer a little bit of complaints and retribution.
Okay, sounds good. They're up on the screen for everybody. You can see the email there and the license number, and we'll also include that in a follow-up email. But that is an important action item that everybody can take now in response to this. That's going to make a huge difference in addition to showing up next week. So thank you, Mike. Is there anything else you wanted to add before I move on?
Yeah, just let's get out there. Let's have a great time. Let's pray on those sidewalks on January 11th. Let's make as much noise as we possibly can to say that this is simply unacceptable, and New Mexico is going to fight back the cancellation, fight back what is happening on the sidewalk, and fight back with the legislation they repealed last year.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Thank you, Mike. And we're going to be moving along. We got a lot to cover, so I appreciate your help. We'll say goodbye to Mike's ear there. Again, sorry guys. We've typically we don't have trouble with these, but we know that the enemy's not wanting this event to take place next week, so we're expecting it. Okay, that being said, I want to pull on a special guest, good friend, who is the director of the CareNet in Albuquerque, Paula Gonzales, who has been helping a lot in the last week get everything set up. So I'm just pulling you on, Paula, if you're there, and. You've been helping a lot with the logistical details, pulling things together at the last minute. When we announced that this march was even going to happen, we really didn't even have some details confirmed, but you've been helping with that. Can you let folks know the day of the event, where to show up, and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, the March for Life will take place from 3:30 to 5, and it'll be located at Hoffmantown Church at 88 Harper Drive Northeast, and people will be able to park in the parking lot of Hoffmantown Church on the northeast corner of the church, and we'll go around the academy, and it's about a little over 2 miles, 2-mile walk, which is nice. Bring your family, bring your friends, really promote it to your neighbors. We really want to make a big commotion and stand for life and fight for life. So that's what we get to do. And so again, it's going to be located at Hoffmantown Church from 3:30 to 5, and come join us.
All right. I know that was the question we were all asking is, well, we just learned about this. We want to go. What's the address? So that was it, folks. You got it. Hoffmantown Church. We'll be following up with that in text and an email, just so you all make sure you get it right in your GPS and all. And I know I'm going to be making the trip up there to be with you in person at Hoffmantown Church, the 4-hour drive from the southern part of the state. And so I'm really looking forward to being. Yeah. Thank you, Paula, for your help with all of this.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's an honor. Please bring signs that say, we're standing up for life. That's amazing. If we could just, it's more about just showing our fight for life and letting New Mexico know that we're going to continue to fight.
And, Paula, I was really grateful in one of your emails in organizing this. You put together a list of all the groups that are participating in this, because that wasn't immediately evident when we first put it out. This is not something I'm good with the webcast and the emails, so I help with that. But this is not some Coalition for Life thing. This is we've got on the list New Mexico Alliance for Life, Project Defending Life, the Cherub Initiative. We got CareNet in Santa Fe, CareNet in Albuquerque, Students for Life, Abortion Free New Mexico, Family Policy Alliance, Knights of Columbus, Awareness New Mexico, Casa de Mariposa, Alongside Ministries, Origins, New Mexico Right to Life, and more. That was just that we kind of like as we were going through, the initial groups and even more churches that are involved. And I want to thank you especially for pointing that out when we were so busy with the details and logistics. To really what matters is that unity coming together. Can you tell folks just briefly what you guys do as part of that with CareNet?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Can you tell folks just briefly what your part is in that with CareNet in Albuquerque?
Absolutely. So I am the executive director for the CareNet Pregnancy Centers of Albuquerque, which we have 5 locations. And one of them is our medical mobile unit. And so I get the pleasure and honor and humble to serve the community clients, women and men, to come into our centers and to get free services, free ultrasounds, pregnancy tests. And we're seeing an increase of that coming into our center. So we are preparing for the upcoming, for what's to come. And I truly believe that the Lord is preparing us, and I love that we're stronger together than we are apart. And I love the unity of all the collective pro-life organizations. As we all know, we're 100% funded by supporters. So God is so good in providing, and so that's my part in the pro-life community, and I am honored to be here today.
Thank you so much, Paula. I really appreciate everything that you're doing. I was really amazed at how much you've gotten done in such a short amount of time to put this together. Christina, you also point out Silent No More awareness wasn't mentioned, and I know Rachel's Vineyard and a bunch of groups like that are going to be there. So thank you. And if we somehow missed you, I apologize, but we'll be sure to just send us an email. We'll make sure we want to include everybody. So Paula, any last thoughts? I appreciate it.
No, I'm just so excited to be part of the entire process of this. It's a humbling experience, and I can't wait. I still haven't met you in person, and I'm excited to meet everyone in person on January 11th. So thank you for allowing me to be part of it.
Oh, no, we're looking forward to it. Okay. Paula, God bless you. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you there in Albuquerque when we make it the trip up next week. So, okay, folks. Now, typically we have in the past, the March for Life has been done in the state capitol in Santa Fe, and coming to us from Santa Fe right now is the CareNet director in Santa Fe, Roberta Cheek, dear friend of mine. And Roberta, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Mark. I'm so excited to be here and so honored to be with you and with Mike and Paula, some of my favorite people in the planet, right here in one place.
You're right there in the state capitol. Can you just remind people the importance of getting involved and especially with this issue of abortion, and not just for the children involved, but the women as well?
It's an interesting thing, Mark. I am a native New Mexican, and so when I hear people talk about New Mexico being the state, the abortion capital, that just breaks my heart, because that's not how I was raised. That's not how this state is. And to see that shift happen from the value of life to now embracing such a spirit of death. People talk about abortion helping women, but the reality is that abortion hurts women. Just a quick Google of the symptoms of post-abortive women. I did that today. Depression, guilt, flashbacks, nightmares, substance abuse, tendencies towards suicide. It goes on and on. So that's the thing that the abortion industry never talks about. Yes, there may be this initial feeling of relief, but the reality is that once the initial feeling is that all these emotional and physical consequences happen. Because see, as women, we are by nature, we want to nurture, and that's our nature. And abortion goes against everything that the body wants to do. So when you ask me to talk about why people should get involved, The reason that people should get involved is because, particularly in the state of New Mexico, what has happened is that people became complacent. We let other people do the work. We trusted our government. We trusted our churches. And people fell asleep. And, I have to speak on behalf of the churches because our churches are not speaking about abortion at the pulpit. And people need to hear from the pastors what's going on in the abortion industry, what's going on in just the spirit of death that has come upon us. And pastors are the people that need to be leading that. In 2 Chronicles 7, God tells us that when his people, here's a paraphrase, when his people turn from evil, then he will restore, he will heal our land. New Mexico needs to be healed. And we need to turn away from that. We need to be like Nehemiah. We've been way too soft on this, sitting back, trusting other people to do that. And every person needs to be involved. I just got an email that said that 42.6 babies lost their life to abortion last year in 2021. So why are we not as concerned about abortion as we are about COVID? More people lost their lives to abortion than they did to COVID, to heart disease, to cancer. All of those combined did not kill as many people as abortion did. Talk about a pandemic going on, it's abortion. And so people need to get involved at whatever level God calls them. But I think even more than getting involved to where God called them is to get out of our comfort zone and get uncomfortable and start speaking up about this. You asked me to share a little bit about what pregnancy centers do. And recently there was an article that talked about how dangerous pregnancy centers were to pregnant individuals. They didn't say pregnant women, but pregnant individuals. Do you see the distortion that happens there? Well, what we do at pregnancy centers is that we give hope. Truly, we are more pro-life in that we sit down and advocate for this woman as to really what her choices are so that she walks away with an informed decision. Over the last 13 years, literally, I have had an opportunity to talk to hundreds of women who have had abortions. And most of them did it with little or no information. No information about fetal development, no information about what the abortion procedure looked like, no information about the option to adopt, to place their baby up for adoption. These are all things that we do at the pregnancy center. So you see, when women talk about abortion helping women, it really doesn't. And when you ask why people need to be involved, it's because somebody needs to go to bat for the unborn. Somebody needs to go to bat for the aging. We as a community are so excited to see us coming together for this Walk for Life on March 11th and having Abby Johnson here. It's just a great time in our country to get involved and work with a sword in one hand and the Bible in the other. So thank you, Mark, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Always excited to work with the pro-life group of families.
Amen. Thank you, Roberta. This is a question I hadn't mentioned. It just came to me as you were talking, because I remember thinking that too. With the real pandemic is the abortion pandemic, and but one thing we've seen in the southern part of the state is kind of a different level of desperation that women are feeling. And I wouldn't attribute it to COVID as so much that because so much medical services are just so locked down and restricted and difficult, and it's just harder to get things because of all the policies that are in place. It just seems like there's this different level of almost despair and desperation. Is that something that you've seen at all in your area?
Most definitely. So many of the individuals that we are seeing now, and our particular center has kind of shifted from helping pregnant people in general, pregnant women in general, to really focusing on helping those who are considering abortion, either abortion vulnerable or abortion determined. And what we have noticed here is that, like you stated, people are very desperate, almost like I have to get rid of this so that I can move on with my life. It goes back to that initial feeling of relief of let's just get this over with. And we hear that often, those exact words, I just want to get this over with. And again, unfortunately, when a woman is pregnant, no matter what the end result is, you're never the same. There's no such thing as just moving on. Whether it ends in a miscarriage or an adoption or parenting or an abortion, that woman is never the same. Her body is never the same. She's never emotionally the same. And so you're right, there is this sense of desperation that happens. I think part of it is because the pro-abortion industry has done a really good job at promoting abortion as a way to be unpregnant. Their exact words. You can be unpregnant. But again, there is no such thing as being unpregnant, because once a woman experiences pregnancy, she's never the same.
Yeah. Roberta, you're absolutely amazing, and it was a pleasure finally meeting you in person earlier this year, and I look forward to being there with you again next week.
Thank you. I appreciate you, and God bless all of you who are doing the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. Now, folks, one of the things I wanted to mention again is that if you do have any questions at all about the event, or if there's something you missed, we'll be sending out all those details in email, but feel free to drop them in the comments, and we'll try our best to answer those live and bring, share your thoughts and questions as well as a part of this. So one of the things too last year, as I mentioned briefly earlier, was in addition to the abortion bill, SB 10, was that we had this other anti-life bill, HB 47, this assisted suicide law. And sometimes this gets a little bit overlooked by the pro-life movement because we are so focused on abortion. But euthanasia is also a threat to life. It's a direct threat to life. And so I'm really excited to bring on at this point one of the, I think the leading voice on standing up in defense of life against the assisted suicide is Alex Schadenberg. Alex, pleasure. You're joining us from Canada, is that right?
Yes, I better speak very loud, eh? No, I'm calling in from Canada. So what happened is HB 47 sadly passed in New Mexico. You are now not only one of the most extreme states in the U.S. dealing with abortion, but you are the most extreme assisted suicide state in the U.S. And your law is actually very sadly going to become a template for other laws across the U.S. So right now, when I'm examining what's happening in other states and the proposed bills that we're going to be seeing throughout the U.S. in 2022, what I'm seeing is copycat bills to the New Mexico law, because it is now considered the template, even though it's the most extreme bill. So what did New Mexico do? Well, it legalized assisted suicide, and a lot of people think that's about choice, but that's a lie. It's about abandoning people at a vulnerable time of their life. But the New Mexico law is far wider than the other laws, because you have a 48-day waiting period, 48-hour waiting period, sorry. But of course, they said that you can waive the 48-hour waiting period. So technically, you have no waiting period in New Mexico. So somebody can die the same day. When they're having a bad day, they can die the same day. You only need one approval. If the person is registered for hospice, then they don't need a second approval. They need one approval. That's it. And on top of it, they expanded who can do these acts, who can be involved with prescribing lethal drugs, and who can actually do the act. So they've included nurses in there, not just doctors, etc. And so why would they do that? Obviously, because they wanted more people to be involved in the act. If you look at Oregon and Washington State, one of the biggest boundaries to assisted suicide is doctors willing to do it. And I guess you would say the same thing would be true for abortion. Doctors willing to do it as a boundary to people getting an abortion. So, and there was more to your law on assisted suicide, but I'm telling you, we need a culture shift in New Mexico. If we're going to set back assisted suicide in America, obviously one of the places that needs to happen is in a state where it's the most extreme. We need to stop. We not only need to stop it, we need to stop it. We need to make it end in New Mexico, and that's going to require a successful November election. And I think that New Mexico, I think your people who are organizing right now are going to be capable of putting together a promotion, an idea that will actually overturn the direction of things in New Mexico for this November 22 election.
Absolutely. And thank you too. And I got to admit, you've actually really even opened my eyes to the importance of paying attention to assisted suicide in the culture of life battle. Can you speak to, like, I've heard concerns, like, there might be some people who are against abortion, but they might say, well, euthanasia, it's not good, but it's not as much of a priority because at least people had a choice. The babies don't have a choice. And it makes it a little bit harder for people to take a stance. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Well, in fact, they use the same language in both debates. They talk about choice and autonomy, my body, my choice. Where have you heard that before? But in fact, all of these things are lies anyway. And the difficulty with assisted suicide is all of us are human beings and we all fear pain. We all fear suffering. I was just talking to a man last night. He called me. He wanted euthanasia. He called me because we also have a helpline. And I was talking to him. And yes, he's going through a lot of pain and difficulty. There's no question about it. But the fact of it is he wants to live, and he needed someone to affirm that. And when you legalize euthanasia or assisted suicide, you're abandoning people. You're saying, well, we're not going to affirm your life. We're going to affirm your death. You're going through a bad time. We're going to cause your death when you're going through a bad time. We're not going to give you a chance to have an up time. We're on top of it. We're looking at the concept of ending life. If you can end life at the beginning of life, then you can end life at the end of life. Well, then we go further than that. We say, well, what about people with disabilities? What about people in these conditions? We start expanding it, because once now life is expendable, why wouldn't it be expendable for others? And so when we talk about what's going on in the Netherlands, for instance, it's not far away from what's happening in New Mexico, even though you've just started there. You have the most extreme law in the US, but they're talking about now this thing called, tired of living. So if they come to a point and they're in their 70s and they feel they've lived their life, they should be able to go to their doctor and get the drugs and die. Well, that is the ultimate abandonment of people in a culture. That is just the ultimate. And this is the way it goes, where you have assisted suicide, soon then you have child assisted suicide. And then they say, oh, it's all about choice and autonomy, but what about the person with Alzheimer's? So it's not about choice and autonomy, it's about killing people. And then I always say to people, well, look at the law. Look at the language of the law. Remember, everything's based on what the law says, the wording of the law. And the law is about giving your doctors the right to kill you. That's what the law is about. That's what the law does. Okay, they say it's about choice and autonomy. No, the law is about giving the power into the hands of physicians and nurses, in this case too, to cause your death. It's a very, very, very serious situation. We have to turn things around, and the best way to turn it around is to focus on where it's the worst and to really go at it and undo it. And that's what we need to do.
So with, I think, not even less than 2 weeks notice, you heard we were going to have a March for Life here in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Coming from Canada. Am I right? You're coming from
Absolutely.
Canada
Yeah.
to attend in Albuquerque, because this is potentially one of the worst situations in the world, is what I'm hearing. Is that right?
Well, you're the worst in the U.S.
In the US.
Obviously, Canada is probably the worst in the world. But I mean, the fact of it is that you're setting the stage for things in the U.S. So it's time that we, how would you say, unset that stage. It's time that we make a difference. And as I'm saying, my whole focus to when I'm talking to people in New Mexico will be, you've got midterm elections coming up in November. Let's change the direction of things in New Mexico. Let's do this now. And there are ways to do this, and let's work together. Like, unity makes a huge difference, and we can accomplish this.
Yeah. Well, Alex, I certainly appreciate it, and I look forward to. I know you joined our webcast a year ago, but to finally be meeting you in person. And but do you have any other thoughts for people who are watching right now?
I say you need to, as I've said, you need to work together. We need each other. Sometimes we may not even agree with each other and everything, but that's okay. We need each other, and we need to work together, because the fact of it is there's a big job ahead, and life is in the balance. This is life and death. This isn't no, this is life and death. This is pretty darn serious.
Right. Well, Alex, I certainly appreciate it, and I'll be standing with you to defend life at all stages, especially when it's a direct threat of suicide.
And I'm glad I can hear you now, Mark. So it's all good.
Yeah. I know you were one too, though. With all the comments, I was looking up at my camera, right, and trying not to look down like a bad Zoom.
But it's all good. This is what happens.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. And we got a comment here saying that that you're absolutely right. This is something that absolutely has to be won at the polls. And
absolutely.
So yeah, thank you for drawing our attention to that. And we're going to do our part to get our movement aware of this and doing our part too. So, Alex, God bless you. Look forward to seeing you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And one thing, I just had this thought too. I want to be careful and make sure people realize this is different than, there are some people who try to use the what do they call it? The whole, the whole life, I'm drawing a blank right now, but the what the heck they call it. It's like the blanket or the fabric or whatever of life. Someone might know in the comments what I'm trying to get at. But they try to make it like, oh, basically abortion is not that big of a deal. There's so many other issues that we need to be concerned about that all are offensive to the dignity of a human person. And a lot of times that's used to basically avoid dealing with abortion. Assisted suicide is different than that argument, though, because this is a direct threat against someone's life. It is the taking of a life. It's not just an issue that is problematic or against someone's dignity. It's a direct threat against someone's life. And so especially with that, just New Mexico in so many ways going down the drain. Oh, right. Consistent ethic. Thank you. That this is different than that. This is not that argument that they're trying to make. And I'm sure Alex, when he comes, we can. I thought of that after the fact, but we'll be going over that too. There's definitely life is the preeminent issue. All threats directly against life. So, okay. That being said, we are waiting for State Representative Rebecca Dow to join our call here pretty soon. I know she's got some important updates on what's happening legislatively and what we need to be paying attention to with all of this stuff. Seamless garment, that was the other one. That's what I was trying to think of. So she'll be joining us here shortly. We're trying to get her on the call, but I know a lot of what all of you are joining, especially excited about what Mike said, is that just because of the state of everything that's happening in New Mexico, and then with this incident happening at the Planned Parenthood in Albuquerque, this has caught a lot of people's attention. I'm in a unique position. I'm a New Mexican down here. I'm married to a Texan. We actually live on State Line Road. We're like right on the Texas-New Mexico border. So I do a lot of work in both states. And one of the big, advocates that I really get the pleasure to work with when it comes to the Texas side of things is, of course, one of the most famous Texans in the pro-life movement is Miss Abby Johnson. And so I was excited to hear, Abby, that you basically just heard about everything happening and just you were coming regardless. Like there wasn't even a march plan. You were just going to be here. So like, what was it that compelled you to say, I'm going to New Mexico?
Well, hello, Mark. Honestly, I was just mad. So I am compelled to do things in anger. So,
oh, you kind of cut up. It seems like you froze a little bit. See if you can maybe.
I was annoyed when I saw the video of what had happened on the sidewalk, and the people inside of these abortion clinics, they kill babies for a living. And so for them to believe that they have any authority on that sidewalk, it angers me. And so when I saw what had taken place, I thought, no, that's not going to happen. And we are going to take a stand. And, obviously the people at Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry in Albuquerque believes that they have the authority to bully people on the sidewalk, and they don't. They don't have the legal authority to do it. And more than that, they don't have the moral authority to do it. And I just sort of said, let's see if they have the guts to bully me around. And so with that, I talked to Mike and I said, you know what? I've had enough of what's going on in Albuquerque, and I'm going to come out. And so we talked about it, and he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I can come quietly and just pray on the sidewalk, or I can come and cause a commotion, and I would prefer to cause a commotion. And I can tell you that we have had abortion clinic workers that have left that particular Planned Parenthood in Albuquerque, praise God. And what's happening inside that facility is atrocious. And so we are working with those employees who have left. We are encouraging them to make complaints, to come forward with the information that they have. But what's taking place inside of that facility is terrible. And that made me even more determined to come there and to basically say, we're not going to put up with this anymore. And so that's really why I'm coming.
Well, I'm excited, and knowing that it was just the just the issue that compelled you, and knowing your heart for this, I was really not surprised, but also excited to be going up to join you. So you're coming out. I know there might be a lot of people watching though who they've been active politically maybe, but they've been concerned about going out to the sidewalks, being present. It's just that it's kind of past that comfort zone of kind of the safety of what I can do from a ballot box or something. Can you speak to that? Any what concerns if this is that opportunity for someone to come out to the sidewalk the first time?
I mean, of course it's uncomfortable. It's weird to go and stand out in front of a business and pray for that business, to pray for its demise. That's a weird thing. It is a thing that is countercultural. To be against abortion is unfortunately countercultural. And but that's the right thing to do. Many times doing the right thing is countercultural. Christ was countercultural, and I want to be like him. And so we do the things that are uncomfortable, even if it makes us scared. We do it scared. And so I'm not asking people to do things that make them comfortable. I'm specifically asking people to do things that make them uncomfortable. The most uncomfortable I think I've ever been in my life was the first time that I went and stood and prayed and sidewalk counseled in front of my former clinic. I don't think you'd ever get more uncomfortable than that. Facing the people that were my closest friends for 8 years and now standing in front of them and opposing them. But I did it, and I did it scared. And if I can do that, then you can go and stand on those sidewalks. And you know what? Your presence might save a life. And that's worth you feeling any sort of angst or being uncomfortable out there. That's worth it. And you do it because Christ compels us to do it.
And what is and just briefly, because I know I don't want to keep you too long, but what does this next step look like after if and when Roe is overturned through Dobbs in June or so? It's Texas, it's now banned with the Human Life Protection Act. New Mexico is the exact opposite. Are we completely on our own? What does this look like for national movement? I mean, I've only been in the movement for a few years, and it's going to completely shift. Like, is there something that we can kind of just be ready for? I guess I don't know if that's a fair question, but
yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately, we know that because of what's happened here in Texas already with the heartbeat bill. We know that because of that, unfortunately, that has pushed some women into New Mexico. So we've sort of unfortunately created a problem in New Mexico. And so I think that what we'll have to do when Roe is overturned, I think that what we'll have to do is, some of us that are sort of in that place where Roe will be overturned, like Texas, like Oklahoma, those states, we're going to have to really lend our resources to states like New Mexico, right? So these border states are going to really have to increase our activism. So we're going to have to lend our support. We're going to have to lend our resources. We're going to have to come and, increase our presence on your sidewalks. We're going to have to come and be a part of your rallies, because it's not like we're not going to have things to do here in our own state. Of course we are, right? Of course, we're still going to have pregnancy centers to run, and we're going to have more women to serve, probably more than ever, right? So just because Roe ends doesn't mean that we don't have work to do. Yes, we will still have a tremendous amount of work to do in our state, not to mention all of the healing that's going to have to happen in these states when Roe is ended, and abortion becomes illegal. But as far as the activism piece goes, all of us who are activists, right? All of us who really thrive by being out on the sidewalk, all of us who just feel compelled to sidewalk counsel, to reach out to women, we're going to have to start making those trips, right, to Albuquerque. We're going to have to start making those trips to other states where abortion is still legal. We're going to have to start hopping on those planes, right? There's a direct flight from Austin to Albuquerque. So it's easy for me to make that little jaunt. We're going to have to start lending those resources to other states so that we can start then really empowering people in those communities to change the culture and do what we've done in our states and help then create momentum in other states to make those states a culture of life.
That's so reassuring, and I wasn't necessarily going for that exactly, but I just felt such a peace when you said that because there's a lot of talk of once it's no longer federal, it's state by state, and it's smaller, more winnable battles, and part of me thinks New Mexico, so it's easy to feel that despair that I don't know if this is going to be a winnable battle, but we know that through Christ all things are possible, of course.
Or you all just come and move to Texas and we just let New Mexico go in the wind, right? I mean, that's, no, I'm just kidding. No, but I mean, that's what we have to do, right? We just have to create more and more momentum. And I think it is a winnable battle, right? Sure. We just have to band together and there are other battles to be fought. I mean, Alex Schadenberg is one of my favorite people in the pro-life movement. He doesn't know that, but he's one of my favorite people in the pro-life movement, even though he's Canadian. And so because I love what he's doing. He's so super smart. And it is a part of the movement that I think is new to us as Americans, but it is the next frontier in the pro-life movement. And I think for most states, it's something that we haven't even thought about. And that is where they're going next. Right. So, they're going to vulnerable populations and they've been preying on the preborn for so long. Now they need a new target, and it's going to be the elderly. It's going to be the aged. It's going to be, the differently abled. That's where they're going next.
Do you have any thoughts on what I was trying to articulate on, how this is not the seamless garment argument, assisted suicide? Have you given that any thought?
Yeah, I mean, it is different. I mean, I'm not for the seamless garment issue, because the seamless garment argument, because that can be like, people that are for seamless garment are like, climate change is a pro-life issue, or GMOs are, a pro-life issue. And it's really not, right? This is a life or death issue. So this is life in the balance, and this is life on the line. And so this is really a different issue, because this is a different weight. And so I think we need to be careful. I think that we always have to be careful when we're, I always talk about life as a continuum. So, we're here, the pro-life movement is here to protect life from conception until natural death. And so we're talking about any intentional disruption in that continuum, any intentional disruption in that continuum, right? That's what we're here to stop. So we're not, that's why I say, like, immigration, that's not a pro-life issue, right? So because immigration is not intentionally disrupting life on that life continuum, right? It affects life, but it's not killing people, right? So it's actually not a pro-life issue. Now there are immigration issues, so you may care about immigration issues, but it's not actually taking a life. It's not interrupting life on that life continuum. Euthanasia is.
Right.
Abortion is. And so that's why those two issues are sort of in the pro-life sphere.
Yeah, thank you. I know that just
Does that
really
make sense? I don't know if that made sense.
No, it did. And I mean, if you think about, we have it defined, there's life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. There's threats to each of those, and those are all important issues. But, a lot of these that are a threat to liberty or a threat to in various ways or pursuits of happiness, it's still different than that direct threat to life. I just wanted to address that because I know we've got, there's so much of us is just entrenched to us that, we're just fighting abortion, but it's such an interesting situation we're in, seeing in New Mexico, and it goes hand in hand, this culture of death. And it's just, they're just broadening their spectrum of who they're going after.
Well, and I think it's particularly with the immigration issue, I think here in Texas and New Mexico and Arizona, these border towns, and I think there's religious leaders and other people who have really broadened that definition of, I'm pro-life because I'm pro-immigration. And that's the primary issue for me is, immigration and pro-life, and that goes hand in hand. But actually, that's an immigration issue. That's a different issue. You can be pro-life and believe something totally whatever about immigration. It does not. It doesn't have anything to do with your pro-life beliefs because it's two separate issues, because nothing about immigration is directly killing a human being.
Sure.
And so it's two completely separate issues. It's like any other issue except for euthanasia and abortion. And so there's many different issues. It's that, people try to clump in to the pro-life movement, and that becomes really dangerous because then we start to water down what we're actually trying to fight. And you pile so many things on the pro-life boat that the boat starts to sink. And we've really got to be laser focused on what we are trying to end here. And that is the deliberate killing of innocent human beings.
Absolutely. Well, Abby, I'm super, super grateful. And I just working with you, like I said, I know your heart, and I'm just so appreciative that you're coming to lend your voice to the state of New Mexico, and look forward to doing so. And just thank you very much for your time.
Of course. Thank you so much.
All right. God bless. We'll see you soon, Abby.
All right.
All right, folks. Okay, so in the last 10 minutes too, I did want to bring on, we've been talking so much about the importance of the polls and the legislative and, changing the culture, but also, what's got us in this situation in the state of New Mexico has been a lot of the crazy stuff we've been seeing going on at the legislative level. So we're very blessed to have an amazing advocate for life from the New Mexico State Legislature. With us is Representative Rebecca Dow from District 38. Representative Dow, thank you so much for joining us and joining our voice in this issue. Can you give folks kind of just an update on, I don't really follow as closely as I should the legislative issues going on in the state until, I know there's a direct threat or something like that. But at the moment, what is it that we need to know as New Mexico voters right now?
Well, I think what's happening in New Mexico and all across the nation is that we need to be paying attention to candidates and to positions of parties, where they stand on protecting our constitutional right that begins with the right to life. And so I love New Mexico Right to Life slogan. Is my favorite right is the right to life. And that's where it all begins, right? Just honoring who we are as a constitutional republic, what the Bill of Rights affords us as citizens of the state, and what we're called to do as believers to defend the voice of the unborn, those who have no voice. We're supposed to stand in the gap for them. And so in the state of New Mexico, we are volunteer representatives. So your House and Senate representatives volunteer their time. There is a per diem while we're at session that helps cover the cost of like hotel and food, those types of things. But aside from that, we are up there volunteering our time being the representative voice of our community. We have a 30-day session and a 60-day session. During the 60-day session, any bill can be introduced, and it is always considered germane or must be considered. It has to be brought before a committee and heard. And so in a 30-day session, it must be a budget bill or a bill that gets the call of the governor. And so considering the circumstances in New Mexico, I think the things that we have the opportunity to focus on right now is budget items. So, for example, should taxpayer dollars be paying for abortions? Of course, the answer to that is no. And should taxpayer dollars support women's right to informed consent or to know all their options? Many a times in New Mexico, that's happening at one of our crisis pregnancy centers. And the answer to that is yes. Of course, that's something that we should be supporting women in, especially considering the percentage of women in New Mexico who find themselves with an unplanned pregnancy, who go looking for help, who are low income and at risk and of color. And so in this climate in the legislative House and Senate, where we're always talking about equity and diversity, and that we support these populations that are considered underserved, it's so important that we make sure that they know all their options. And in New Mexico, that's not happening in abortion clinics. It happens at crisis pregnancy centers.
Absolutely. And we've kind of spoken this to a couple times, but from your perspective too, a lot of times it's easy to get distracted by the big, presidential years and national federal issues, and Roe versus Wade is a federal issue. But I've really been learning more and more, like, can you speak to the importance of getting involved at the local levels, the state levels, especially I think with, the potential overturn of Roe getting, reversed here pretty soon?
Well, okay. First of all, I think I understood what you're saying. It's breaking up a lot, so I didn't quite understand the question. But I think you're asking about Roe versus Wade and what happens in our individual states. Is that?
Yes, and the importance of being involved at the local state levels in that
Yes,
context.
absolutely. It's critically important that we get involved at the state level, and that we reject any sort of barrier that the state puts up to prohibit us from doing that. So, for example, I've heard a lot of people say, I can't go to the Capitol because there's a vaccination mandate. Well, go ahead and take advantage of the fact that within that new rule, there's exemptions for religious, personal, and medical exemptions. So you can go to the Capitol if you have a written letter that says that you can participate if there is a religious exemption, a medical exemption, or personal reason why you're not vaccinated. So that would be one example of where it's a little bit more difficult to participate. And so these barriers are being put up all around the nation to suppress any First Amendment, our right to free speech, if we do not agree with the populist narrative, or what's being presented as a populist narrative. We're seeing people removed from Facebook. We're seeing people, articles, one that came out today against crisis pregnancy centers in New Mexico that had no references and was not an evidence-based study, but just as, reports say or some think. And so we see this type of what people call misinformation, fake news, and it just poor media that discourages people from participating in the process. Your vote counts, your voice counts, get engaged.
Absolutely. Well, Rebecca, it just, like I said, it's this piece that I have, knowing that we have you and your voice in the legislator in our state. And I pray for you guys all the time because I know what you're up against, and I cannot imagine. I'm glad you're doing it, because I can't imagine facing that on a constant basis. So thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you so much. Thank
Yes,
you guys
good.
for what you do.
Pleasure. Any last thoughts? I want to make sure I give you a chance to say everything.
No, I just, you talk about peace. And this last legislative session, I had the opportunity to debate and defend life on the House floor. And, we know how that bill turned out. It passed, and we removed conscientious objection from a right in the state of New Mexico. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. At the same time, there's this spirit of optimism and hope that for the first time in a long time, the citizens of New Mexico were informed of the truth, and the progressives showed their hand and what their agenda is when it comes to ending the life of the unborn. And we have this unique opportunity now to, they started it and we get to finish it, being a voice of truth and to bring hope and healing to our state.
Amen. Rebecca, God bless you, and we'll be praying for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, folks. One comment I wanted to share, Virginia, saying for the first time, in a way, grateful that we're getting attention and support for being at the top of a worst list in our country. New Mexico is under bondage, and when it is dark, the light shines brighter. So let's cause a commotion next week by standing for truth, life, and shine the light of Jesus Christ to our oppressive government. So thank you very much. I thought that captured well the point of what we're doing next week is, you might say, well, what's the point of going out? Because this is how it starts. This is how people wake up. This is what changes hearts and minds, is going out, being there. You can pretend to care, but you can't pretend to show up. And that is really powerful. So let's be there. Let's show up. Again, that's going to be at Hoffmantown Church in Albuquerque. That's 8888 Harper Road Northeast, Hoffmantown Church. I'm pretty sure that's the right one. But and then, oh no, yeah. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm not native to you guys. So, but anyway, we'll be following up with an email to make sure that everyone has all of those details. So, thank you guys again, and that's coming into the end of our hour. Thank you for bearing with us through all of this on this short notice and getting this together. But now it is up to you to spread the word in the remaining few days that we have before this event, because we didn't have time to promote it for weeks and months. We really are relying on the grassroots, on you sharing this and spreading this. We've also got, by the way, Abby will be speaking not only at the rally. She's going to be speaking. Yeah, it's going to be 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. At the rally. I'm looking at some comments people are sharing at Legacy. That's right. So I apologize, guys. It really has been the last minute event because we've just been getting all of our notes together. But we'll put this all together, and it's at 11. Abby is speaking at Legacy on the East Side, and then it will be later in the day at the 1 p.m. at the March. So there's a couple of events going on, and we will lay that all out. Check back to the New Mexico March4Life.com, and we'll make sure it's very clear. If you have any questions at all, contact us through that website. And it looks like some of you are getting started actively spreading the word, share it everywhere. So let's do this. Let's make some noise, like I said, and tell that to your friends too. You know, you can pretend to care, but you can't pretend to show up. All right, guys, thank you very much for joining us. God bless you, and we will see you next week. Take care. Bye.